Good morning and welcome to the Fund at Fast Chat. I'm Rochelle Butler, Energy Manager with the San Joaquin Valley Clean Energy Organization. Thank you all so much for being with us on this Tuesday morning. We are going to get going momentarily, but first we're going to take care of our housekeeping. Please make note that all of your microphones have been muted upon joining the call. This is simply to minimize background noise. If you have any questions at all, I encourage you to go ahead and submit them using the chat box. As always, we will make some time at the end of the presentation to address those questions. Finally, I would like to invite everyone to go ahead and connect with us. You can connect with us on any one of our many platforms. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, or you can just reach out the old-fashioned way via email or by telephone. And don't worry if you didn't quite get all of that. Just remember, you can access any of our resources by going to our website, and that's at sjvcleanenergy.org. Again, that's sjvcleanenergy.org. And with that, I'm going to jump right in. So it's been quite a while since we've talked about water and water projects. In fact, it's been since January of this year, but we've actually covered quite a number of programs in water-related funding and financing. We've covered the Water Infrastructure Systems Efficiency Program. We've also covered the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, or WIFIA for short. We've covered Water Smart grants and programs. And we also cover the California Water Board DWSRF program. So we've done quite a lot in this area. I believe all of these programs that I just mentioned are still operational, and I would encourage you to go back and check out those fast chats. And while you're there, please remember to go ahead and give us a like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. This helps other folks just like you to find our content. So I will be sure to include links to all of those fast chats in the follow-up resources email later on today. Moving along, I'm sure you're all aware that the state of California is in the midst of a severe drought. So Governor Newsom declared a state of emergency as a result of the drought, especially given the position we were in after the first quarter of this year. So things were looking pretty dire. This declaration actually puts in place a number of things, including the state government's ability to allocate resources to address these issues. On April 21st of this year and on May 10th of this year, the governor proclaimed a state of emergency to get aid to the most affected counties of the state. Then the proclamation was expanded to 50 counties, that's quite nearly the whole state, on January 8th because the drought is worsening, unfortunately. I'm going to skip a bunch of steps in between and just explain to you that the Small Community Drought Relief Program is in part a result of that state of emergency proclamation that was made earlier this summer. So this program allows for nearly $200 million to be appropriated in response to the 2021 drought. The funding will be available for encumbrance or expenditure until June 30th of 2024. So this is a multi-year program. The funding is meant to provide immediate financial and technical support to small communities, which are often the hardest hit by these types of disasters. Also, this funding aims to implement resiliency measures and infrastructure improvements. Now, I'll tell you, resiliency and infrastructure, whenever those two terms are mentioned, our ears perk up a little bit because that generally means there's opportunities for energy efficiency as well. Okay, so let's talk about who's eligible to apply. Eligible applicants include public agencies like cities and counties, public utilities, special districts like school districts, community service districts, irrigation districts, flood control districts, and reclamation districts. There's a lot of different types of special districts. Colleges and universities are eligible to apply. Mutual water companies, nonprofit organizations, specifically those that fall under the 501c3 tax exemption, federally recognized Indian tribes, and also state Indian tribes that are listed on the Native American Heritage Commission's California Tribal Consultation List. That was a mouthful. But basically, the state recognized Indian tribes. That's quite a long list. However, all eligible applicants must meet all relevant eligibility criteria to be considered for funding. This specific criterion can be found in the program guidelines, which I will provide for you in our follow-up email after the call today. And also, another thing to keep in mind, if the agency that's applying is a recipient of another grant from the DWR, the Department of Water Resources, they must be in compliance with the terms of that other grant as well in order to qualify. So, for example, you have to make sure you're up to date on like your reporting requirements and items like that for the other grant. That's just something to keep in mind. So what types of projects are we talking about here? So in general, there are 7 different project categories. I have them on the screen here. However, keep in mind, there are project examples within each category. And so I'll give you an example here. One of the project categories is hauled water, the hauled water category. This sounds fairly self-explanatory, but it consists of the transportation of water either via truck or via rail from the source to the beneficiary community. New wells and or rehabilitation of existing wells is also a category. These projects can include drilling of new community wells, equipping new wells, and installation of wellhead treatment. We also have construction or installation of permanent infrastructure, which can include projects such as connections to adjacent water systems, recycled water projects that provide immediate relief to potable water supplies, installation of water system pipelines, booster pump stations, water intake works, water storage tanks, and the construction of other projects that support the immediate and near-term drought response. So when you review these project types, you'll see it's a very broad umbrella in terms of what projects would qualify. So the thing to keep in mind is as long as your project is related to drought response or resiliency, you have a pretty good chance of getting funding through this program. Okay, so we've already talked about the total amount of money that's available out there. It's just under $200 million, and all the funds must be encumbered by June 30th of 2024. Let's talk about some of the other requirements. First, unlike many grant programs, this grant program does not require match funds. That's right, there is no cost share required for this grant program. However, it is encouraged. So it does make your application look a little bit better if you're able to provide a cost share, but if you're not, it won't disqualify you. Also, only costs that are incurred from the issuance of commitment letters forward are approved for reimbursement. So you wouldn't be able to bill back your time prior to that point where you receive your commitment letter. Applications that can demonstrate, or applicants that can demonstrate cash flow problems to the satisfaction of the DWR may be provided advance payments of up to 25% of grant funds awarded. So that's actually a really cool thing. If you are an agency that has cash flow problems, you would be able to get some of those funds up front to kind of alleviate the pressure of floating that capital until reimbursement. So that's a really cool feature. Also, project costs. The eligible project costs include reasonable costs for things like studies, engineering, design, project construction, and other work that's directly related to the scope of work of the project. This can also include administrative expenses. It can also include travel to the extent travel is necessary for the completion of the project. However, it doesn't cover travel outside of California for obvious reasons. Some more fine print. So what costs are not eligible? There is a complete list of specific costs that are not eligible for reimbursement through through the grant program. I'm just going to highlight a few that I think are kind of the big ones. So any costs that are incurred prior to the execution of the funding agreement or the issuance of a commitment letter, I mentioned this briefly earlier, those costs would not be reimbursable through the program. The purchase of any equipment that is not an integral part of the project is also not eligible. Resource funding or replacement of existing funding sources for ongoing programs are also not available. Support of existing punitive regulatory agency requirements and or mandates in response to negligent behavior. So we wouldn't be able to run those types of costs through the program if it's due to negligent behavior. Payment of principal or interest of existing indebtedness or any interest payments. Operation and maintenance costs are not reimbursable. Costs incurred as part of any necessary response and cleanup activities required under, and I'm going to give you a short list here, required under the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation and Liability Act, Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, or the Hazardous Substances Account Act, or any other applicable law wouldn't fall under this program. And federal and state taxes would not be eligible expenses. Expenses incurred in preparation of the proposal or an application for another program. And then finally, and this is really kind of all encompassing, indirect costs, which are costs that are incurred for a common or joint purpose that benefits more than one cost objective, or that are not readily assignable to the funded project. So those would be the indirect costs. So that's a pretty comprehensive list of the ineligible costs. Let's talk about what applications look like. So for this program, there will be no formal solicitation package. So don't wait for that because it's not coming. However, applicants are encouraged to apply as soon as possible because applications will be processed as they're received until the funding is exhausted or until December 29th, 2023, whichever comes first. You may submit applications electronically, or you can mail in your applications, or you can also hand deliver them, although electronic is the preferred method. I'll be sure to include all of that information also in your follow-up email that will go out later on today. In order to be considered for funding, application packets must include application cover sheet, applicant's representatives, a summary of the project costs, an authorizing resolution, and also project proposal, tasks, and budget. So a complete application checklist can be found in Appendix 2 of the program's guidelines. And again, I will provide you with that in our follow-up email. So let's talk about how applications will be evaluated. So primarily, your application must be complete, although additional information may be requested of your agency after your application is submitted. One of the most important things is that this grant funding is not competitive, so your application won't actually be scored. If your application, primarily if your application is complete, if it meets the program's objectives and the project itself is eligible, you'll probably receive funding. This is particularly why potential applicants are highly encouraged to apply as soon as you can before the funding runs out. Applicants must also specify their eligibility in their proposal. Also, because this is a small community drought relief program, projects must benefit small communities that are not supplied by an urban water supplier. And the definition of the urban water supplier can be found in the California Code, CWC, section 10617. And it basically just says that an urban water supplier is one that provides drinking water, with 3,000 customers or more than 3,000 acre feet per year. So if you fall outside of those parameters, then you wouldn't be eligible for the program. Funding amounts requested may be modified to equitably distribute the limited funding that's available. And also, once an application is reviewed and approved by the DWR's management, the selected applicant will receive a commitment letter officially notifying them of their selection and the grant amount that they've been awarded. So that's actually the nuts and bolts of the Small Community Drought Relief Program. If you have any questions about anything I just talked about or any general questions, go ahead and submit them using the chat box. And while you're working on submitting those questions, I just want to mention a couple of things very briefly. Again, I'll just remind you again, look out for our follow-up email later on today. That email will include links to any important resources we discussed during the chat this morning, as well as links to other fast chats that are related to this topic. I highly encourage you to check out those past fast chats. And while you're over there, go ahead and give us a like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. As I mentioned earlier, this helps other folks just like yourself find our content. And with that, I'm going to give our chat box one more peek and see if we have any questions. I don't see any questions there. So I will go ahead and wrap us up. So what's next for the Fund It Fast Chat? We will have our final Fund It Fast Chat of the year 2021. I can't believe I'm saying that, but that will be on Tuesday, December 14th. After that, we will hopefully enjoy our holidays and have a happy and safe new year. And then we will be right back with you again on January 11th of 2022 to kick off the new year. So I certainly hope to see you there. As always, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope everybody stays safe and stays healthy. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.